I woke before dawn to the sound of the horn, sharp and insistent, echoing down the narrow street of my town. My heart pounded even before my eyes opened. This was no market call or village warning. It was the summons I had dreaded and awaited in equal measure, the call to arms. The air was cold, carrying the damp smell of last night's rain, and I sat upright in the straw bed, looking at my wife beside me. Her dark hair spilled across her shoulder. For a moment I simply watched her breathing, peaceful, untouched by the turmoil surging inside me. Then the horn blew again, nearer this time, and she stirred. I pressed my lips to her forehead. "It is time," I whispered, though my voice trembled. She opened her eyes, wide with fear. She tried to hide, and touched my cheek. I forced a smile, though my stomach knotted. My gear waited by the door. My sword, my cloak, the polished leather bridle for my horse valance. When I stepped outside, the world was already stirring. Neighbors gathered in small clusters, wives clutching their husbands' arms, mothers smoothing cloaks over sons who looked too young to carry spears. Smoke from the baker's oven drifted across the street, mingling with the tang of oiled leather and iron. My friend Marcus, another cavalry recruit, hailed me with a raised hand. "Lucretius, the centurion waits. We ride within the hour." His voice was steadier than mine could ever be. I turned once more, and there she was, standing in the doorway, her hands clasped at her chest. She said nothing, only looked at me as though she could hold me in place with her eyes alone. I mouthed the words, "I will return." Then I forced myself to turn away before I faltered, swung into the saddle, and felt the familiar strength of Valence beneath me. The clatter of hooves against cobblestones rang out, echoing through the waking town as we began our march. The legion formed its lines, a great mass of men and horses moving with discipline that shook the earth. I had marched in training before, but never on this scale, never with so many souls bound together under one banner. The air buzzed with shouted orders, creaking wagons, the whinnying of horses. Dust rose in clouds, sticking to our throats. I clutched the reins tight, staring at the road stretching toward the horizon, a road that would carry me far from home. At first the march was steady, even easy. Roman roads cut straight and hard through the countryside, bordered by fields dotted with olive trees and vineyards. But after hours in the saddle, my thighs burned, and my shoulders ached under the weight of armor. The air grew thick with sweat and dust. Still, the veterans marched without complaint, their faces grim but calm, and I tried to take strength from them. Each night we built camp, and each night the silence of darkness pressed heavier upon me. In the campfire's glow, I sat with Marcus and a few others, chewing stale bread and dried meat. "First campaign?" Marcus asked, with a knowing grin. I nodded, swallowing hard. "I've trained, yes, but battle? No, not yet." He passed me a flask of wine, the sour taste burning down my throat. "You'll learn fast. Trust your horse, trust your eyes. Fear keeps you sharp, but don't let it rule you." His words steadied me, though sleep still came slow and restless. The nights smelled of smoke, leather, and damp earth. I often rose to check on Valence, running a hand down his mane. His steady presence anchored me when my thoughts drifted home. I pictured her, my wife, knitting by the hearth, waiting. Sometimes I thought I could almost hear her voice in the wind. Then the camp would stir with the first glimmer of dawn, horns sounding, and we marched again, mile upon mile, the road unending, the horizon always shifting farther away. The landscape changed as we neared the foothills of the Alps. The air grew sharper, the roads steeper, the forests thicker. On the 7th day, the centurion called me forward. "Lucretius, scout ahead." Alone, my chest tightened, but I saluted and rode into the trees. The forest swallowed the sounds of the legion quickly, leaving me with only Valen's steady breathing and the crunch of hooves on leaves. Every crack of a branch made my hand twitch toward my sword. Returning to camp, I reported every detail. The centurion's eyes narrowed, then he clapped my shoulder. "Good. You'll live longer than most scouts if you keep eyes sharper than your sword. Pride flickered in my chest, though fear still coiled deep inside. That night I allowed myself a quiet smile as I shared bread with Marcus. "See," he said, "you've taken the first step. Now the rest will come." But I knew the rest would not be so simple. This was only the beginning. I pushed deeper, the air cool and damp. Birds scattered at my approach, and once I heard voices, low, harsh, foreign. I dismounted, crouched behind a thicket, and peered through the leaves. A Gallic patrol, 5 men, painted, armed with spears. They laughed, unaware of me, one sharpening his blade with slow strokes. My heart hammered in my ears. I studied them carefully, their weapons, their direction, their numbers, then slowly withdrew, leading Valens back the way I came. The next morning, rain slicked the earth, turning the road to mud. Hooves sank deep, splattering my cloak, the wet leather sticking to my skin. Men cursed as their boots grew heavy. My horse stumbled once, but I steadied him with a tug. The gray sky pressed low, and the smell of damp earth filled my nostrils. Still, the column moved on, never pausing. Rome's will was iron, and we were the hammer driving forward. When the horns called for camp, we worked with aching arms to raise palisades and dig ditches. The veterans barked orders, and even in exhaustion none dared disobey. That night, huddled under canvas, I listened to the rain pattering above. Marcus snored beside me, and I envied his ease. I lay awake, thoughts drifting to her face, her warmth, her laughter. I clutched the small carved charm she had given me, a wooden token of Fortuna, and prayed silently to the goddess of chance. The days blurred, the rhythm of marching and building camps as steady as a heartbeat. Scouts like me ranged ahead, returning with reports of villages abandoned, smoke rising from distant hills. The Gauls knew we came. Once, I found a farmhouse burned 2 blackened beams, the air still reeking of char. Chickens wandered wild among the ruins. I wondered who they had been, what family had lived there. War did not ask such questions. It swallowed all Roman and Gaul alike. One evening, we reached the edge of a vast forest. Trees rose like pillars, their canopy swallowing the sky. The general ordered scouts to ride through at dawn. My name was among them. That night I barely touched my rations. Fear gnawed me, though I hid it behind a forced smile. Marcus clasped my shoulder, eyes open. "Brother, remember your training." I nodded, though my throat was dry as dust. Valens nickered softly, as if sensing my unease, his breath warm against my hand. At first light, 10 of us rode into the forest, the mist clinging low, our horses' hooves muffled on damp soil. Shadows stretched long and strange, and every creak of branches set nerves on edge. I kept my hand on the hilt of my sword. The forest smelled of wet moss and decay, heavy and close. Birds erupted suddenly from the trees ahead, and all of us froze, shields half raised. Silence followed, deeper than before, pressing into our ears until even breathing felt loud. We pressed on, slower now. Then it came, a sudden whistle, the hiss of something splitting air. An arrow thudded into the trunk beside me, quivering inches from my head. Shouts rang out in a tongue harsh and guttural. Gauls, they burst from the underbrush, hair wild, shields painted with snarling beasts. Their cries cut through the forest like fire. My horse reared, my heart slammed in my chest. An instinct took over. I lowered my spear, shouting, driving forward with the others. The clash was chaos. Spears jabbed, shields splintered. I remember the face of one Gaul, eyes painted black, rushing me with a blade. Valens lunged, and I drove my spear into his chest. The shock rattled my arms, the man crumpling beneath hooves. Another arrow hissed past my ear. We fought, but only to break free. "Ride, back to the Legion," our leader shouted. We turned, shields up, galloping through the trees with enemies howling behind us. Branches tore at my cloak, my face stung with cuts. When we burst from the tree line, the Legion was ready, lines bristling with spears and shields. The Gauls did not pursue far, retreating like wolves melting into the woods. My breath came ragged, chest heaving. Blood stained my spear, my hands shaking. I had killed a man. No drill or sparring prepared me for the weight of that moment. The centurion nodded grimly. Good work. You lived. Those words should have steadied me, but they echoed hollow, for I knew someone else's son lay dead in that forest. That night the camp was restless. Fires burned low, and men whispered of ambushes, of shadows in the trees. I sat apart, staring into the flames, replaying the fight over and over. Marcus joined me, silent for a long time before he spoke. It does not get easier, but it keeps you breathing. That is what matters. He raised his cup, and I forced mine to meet it, though my hands trembled. I tried not to think of the man's eyes as he fell. The march carried us deeper into Gaul, villages empty, fields trampled. Sometimes children peered from huts, eyes wide with fear. I could not meet their gaze long. Our commanders spoke of glory, of Rome's destiny, but I wondered how many homes like mine would burn before the end. Yet duty bound me. Each morning I saddled Valens, each evening I sharpened my blade. My wife's charm hung around my neck, worn smooth from my fingers. I clung to it as the road stretched ever onward. The next days hardened us. Rain, mud, endless miles of road hour. Legs ached, our backs bent under gear, yet the column never faltered. Horns set the rhythm. The standards ahead pulled us onward, like fate itself. At night, blisters throbbed, and shoulders burned from armor straps. But still we dug ditches, raised palisades, sharpened stakes. I could almost hear Caesar's will pressing down from the heavens. Rome bends, but never breaks. My scouting duties grew heavier. Each dawn, I rode ahead with a handful of others, eyes always sharp, ears straining. The land shifted drolling hills, rivers cutting valleys, scattered farms. Smoke often curled on the horizon, sometimes from hearths, sometimes from ruins. The Gauls moved like ghosts, vanishing before our approach. Their silence was worse than battle. We never knew if they waited behind the next ridge. The men grew wary, voices hushed, as though the air itself listened. One afternoon, our patrol spotted a narrow bridge of wood spanning a swollen river. The timbers groaned under hooves as we crossed. Halfway, Marcus muttered, "Too quiet." His words had barely left when stones whistled down from the bank. I raised my shield just in time. Impact rang through my arm, numbing it. Gauls leaped from cover, roaring. We spurred forward, shields up, spears thrusting. One fell beneath Valens' hooves. Another clung to my bridle before I hacked him down. Blood spattered my cheek, hot and metallic. We broke through, barely intact, and galloped back across the river. Behind us, the enemy's jeers carried over the water. Breath tore my lungs raw, heart hammering like war drums. My body shook, but I forced my voice steady when we reported back. The legate's eyes were cold. They test you. Next time, they die. His certainty was iron, but I still saw the man's face as he clutched my reins, desperate to drag me down. Sleep that night was shallow, filled with grasping hands. The legion pressed forward regardless. Scouts reported villages burning behind US Gauls retreating deeper. Some men cheered, boasting we drove them like cattle. Others, quieter, muttered it was a trap. I felt both truths gnawing at me. Each day, the land seemed more hostile, the silence sharper. I longed for home, for her touch, her laughter in the courtyard at dusk. Instead, I had the stink of sweat, horse dung, and iron in my nostrils, the endless clash of shovel on stone in my ears. When at last we neared a broad plain, the order came: prepare for battle. Word rippled like fire through the ranks. Shields were polished, blades whetted to mirror brightness. Veterans spoke of glory, of spoils, of Caesar's favor. My stomach twisted, not with hunger but dread. The plain stretched wide and open, hills framing the horizon. I imagined the Gauls waiting there in countless numbers, painted, fierce, their horns blaring. My hands trembled as I checked Valen's tack. He sensed it, nudging me as if to lend strength. Night before the battle, the camp was restless. Fires burned high, shadows dancing across armor. Some men prayed aloud, others sang, voices rough with defiance. Marcus told a crude joke, drawing forced laughter, though eyes betrayed fear. I sat apart, turning the charm over and over. I whispered her name, then the names of gods: Mars for strength, Fortuna for chance, even Vesta, keeper of home. My chest ached with longing, but duty pressed heavier. I knew tomorrow would carve a scar into my soul. Dawn came crimson, bleeding across the sky. Horns blared, and the legions stirred like a giant awakening. Armor clattered, standards lifted high, voices shouted orders. My mouth was dry, heart pounding against ribs like a prisoner's fist. We formed ranks, cavalry flanking the infantry. Ahead, across the plain, dust rose a great host advancing. Their horns wailed guttural and savage, echoing through the morning air. The clash began with missiles. Arrows hissed, javelins whistled, stones slunk through the air, shields rattled with impacts, men cursed and screamed. Then came the push lines meeting like waves colliding. I rode with the flank, spear leveled, lungs burning with a roar I scarcely knew was mine. The world narrowed to blood, iron, dust, the scream of horses, the crash of shield on shield. I thrust, pulled, struck again, until arms burned numb and ears rang with fury. Time dissolved into chaos. A Gaul broke past the line, charging me with an axe. His roar filled my skull, eyes wide with hate. I parried with my shield, the impact jarring teeth loose, then drove my spear into his chest. He fell, dragging me half from the saddle. Pain flared in my shoulder, hot and sharp, but I held fast. Valens kicked free, trampling another. The fight surged around me, faces blades, screams all a blur. I thought only of surviving the next heartbeat, then the next. When horns finally called retreat, the ground was littered with bodies. Romans and Gauls alike lay twisted in the mud, blood soaking earth, the stench of iron and death choking the air. My body trembled, every muscle screaming. I looked at my hands, red, shaking, no longer mine. I had lived, though countless had not. Marcus staggered to me, face streaked with grime and blood, but alive. We clasped arms, no words, just the relief of breath still in our chests. That night, silence weighed heavy over the camp. Fires burned low, men slumped in exhaustion, some weeping quietly. I sat apart again, staring at the stars. My shoulder throbbed, my ear still rang with battle cries. I thought of home, of her eyes, her touch. I longed to believe I would see her again, though I knew tomorrow could steal me away as easily as it had others. Still, I whispered her name, clutched the charm, and swore to endure. For her, for Rome, for myself. The morning after the clash was eerily still. Crows circled above the plain, their cries cutting through the silence. The stench of blood clung to everything, sour and heavy. I forced myself to walk among the fallen, helping gather our own. Faces I had spoken with days ago were now waxen masks, eyes staring at nothing. Valens bore a cut along his flank, shallow but painful. I cleaned it with water, whispering thanks to the gods that he had survived with me. Around us, the legion worked with grim efficiency. Ditches dug for the dead, weapons gathered. Wounded carried back to the tents. Caesar himself rode past, his face like stone. He did not look away from the field, nor did he soften his gaze. Some men straightened with pride as he passed, others bowed their heads. I only felt the weight of his presence, as if Rome itself judged us. That night, the fires burned low, and no songs rose. The veterans sharpened blades silently, their eyes far away. I lay awake, staring at the flicker of flame, the sound of shovels still in my ears. Sleep would not come, only the memory of screams. The days that followed were filled with movement. We marched deeper into the wild lands, through forests that seemed endless. Mist hung in the trees, muffling sound, making every crack of a branch feel like a threat. My scouting duties grew more dangerous. We rode ahead in small groups, never sure if ambush waited. Once, we found a village abandoned, food still warm on the hearths, doors swinging open. The silence was worse than fire. It felt as if the land itself was watching. Another time we caught sight of riders far off, shadows darting between trees. They vanished before we could pursue. The Gauls knew this land, as we knew our streets back home. Each day was a test of nerves as much as strength. The men began to speak less. Jokes that once lifted spirits now fell flat. I kept my thoughts locked within, whispering only to Valens in the dark, or to the charm I carried. The weight of home grew heavier with every mile. One evening, after a long march, Marcus sat beside me, breaking bread. His face was drawn, eyes hollow, yet his voice steady. "We will see Rome again, brother. We must." I nodded, though my heart wavered. The next mission came at dawn. We were to ride ahead, searching for signs of a larger force. The air was damp, breath misting before us. I tightened my grip on the reins, praying this would not be the day my luck failed. We rode through the mist, Valens' hooves muffled on soft earth, branches scratching at my cloak, the forest pressing in, shadows shifting as though alive. Every sound made me flinch, a snapping twig, a distant caw, even the whisper of wind. Through leaves, I strained my eyes, searching for movement, imagining Gauls hidden just beyond reach, waiting to test our nerves. Marcus rode close, silent, eyes scanning, lips pressed tight. His presence steadied me, but did not erase the tension in my chest. The air was thick with damp, the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves, and I felt each heartbeat echo in my ears, counting each step, each breath, as though that rhythm alone kept death at bay. Hours passed without sighting the enemy. Small birds rustled in the underbrush, insects buzzed in the heavy air, and the mist began to thin, revealing a narrow valley ahead. The trees opened slightly, the sun a muted glow overhead. Relief pressed briefly on my shoulders, but I knew it was false. A calm before the storm, then the movement came, sudden, rapid. Shadows leaped from the trees, painted and shouting. Spears raised, faces twisted in fury. Arrows hissed, cutting the mist with deadly precision. Valens reared, my hands tight on the reins, and instinct took over. I drove forward, spear aimed, heart hammering, eyes locked on the nearest figure, the world narrowing to the clash before me. The skirmish was violent, chaotic. Men fell on both sides, screams piercing the fog, the clatter of metal ringing like a bell in my skull. Marcus was beside me, swinging his sword with grim determination, his face set, his eyes sharp. I ducked beneath a wild swing, drove my spear home, felt the recoil through my arms, and pressed forward, every movement urgent, precise, desperate. We forced the attackers back, retreating into the forest, but the taste of iron lingered in my mouth, and my hands shook. For a moment, silence returned, thick and suffocating. Valens snorted and stamped, tense and alert. I patted his neck, whispering words of comfort, though my own voice felt hollow. The enemy had tested us, and we had survived, but only barely. As we returned to the main legion, the men welcomed us with nods and grunts, tension easing slightly. Yet the memory of the clash clung to every one of us. Caesar walked among the lines, observing, silent, his presence commanding and unforgiving. I felt both relief and unease under his gaze, knowing he measured every heartbeat, every response. That night, the camp was restless. Fires burned low, shadows stretching, men moving quietly, sharpening blades, tending minor wounds. I sat beside Marcus, sharing bread, silence heavier than any battle. The smell of smoke and wet leather mingled with the lingering scent of blood, an invisible reminder that the land held memory. Sleep came fitful, haunted by flashes of the morning, the painted faces of our attackers, their eyes wide with rage and fear. I woke to the smell of damp moss and cooked stew, Valens nuzzling my shoulder gently. Morning brought orders, movement, the endless rhythm of marching deeper into Gaul, the forest thickening, hiding both danger and opportunity. The days continued, each mission wearing down our bodies, sharpening our senses. Scouting parties returned with little but rumors of greater forces gathering ahead. Fields once golden now lay trampled, villages abandoned or burned. The land itself seeming to mourn the passing of men and horses alike. I could feel the weight of home heavier with each mile. Her image pressed against my thoughts in quiet moments. Yet the constant movement, the need to remain vigilant, forced me into focus. I had to survive. For her, for Valens, for the men who depended on every heartbeat, every instinct. The forest thickened as we pushed onward, sunlight barely reaching the ground, the air damp and heavy with moss and decay. Every step, every snap of a twig made me tense. Valens moved cautiously, ears flicking, muscles coiled. I felt my pulse, hammering, knowing that somewhere ahead, unseen, the Gauls could be watching, waiting to strike. We rode along a narrow path, trees leaning close, roots twisting like the veins of the land itself. Marcus rode beside me, his eyes sharp, scanning every shadow. His quiet presence steadied me, yet I felt the weight of responsibility pressing deep in my chest. One misstep, one moment of hesitation, could end a life mine or his. A sudden rustle made Valens snort and rear slightly. I tightened my grip on the reins, hand on the hilt of my sword. From the shadows, movement flickered, figures darting, painted, armed with spears. They were fast, their war cries muffled, but filled with fury. My chest tightened with fear and excitement alike. I signaled to Marcus, and we moved in unison, spear poised, eyes scanning for openings. The clash came suddenly, Gauls bursting from cover, arrows slicing the air. I ducked beneath a swing, countered with a thrust, heart hammering. The chaos was immediate, brutal, each strike a dance of survival and instinct. Valens twisted beneath, me hooves striking, ears pinned, moving with a grace and understanding I could never fully describe. A Gaul charged, axe raised, and I drove my spear into his flank. He fell, pulling me slightly from the saddle, my shoulder stinging with impact. I held fast, adrenaline surging, senses sharp, knowing that each second mattered. The skirmish ebbed and flowed, men on both sides, struggling, screaming, blood on mud and leaves. I pressed forward, spear and shield working in tandem, guided by training and raw instinct. Each heartbeat counted, each breath a reminder that we were alive and could be dead in a single instant. Eventually, the Gauls withdrew, melting back into the forest-like shadows, leaving the ground littered with the fallen. My chest heaved, lungs raw, muscles trembling. I patted Valens' neck, whispering reassurances, though my voice felt hollow. Victory was temporary, survival fragile. Returning to the Legion, we were met with wary glances, nods of acknowledgement. The men sensed the tension that lingered in our ranks, the weight of lives narrowly preserved. Caesar rode among us, silent and observing, his eyes unyielding, measuring every detail. I lowered my gaze, feeling both pride and unease under his scrutiny. Night fell with uneasy calm. Fires flickered low, shadows stretching across tired faces. The smell of smoke and sweat mixing with the lingering metallic temps of blood. Men whispered softly, tending wounds, preparing weapons. I sat apart, staring into the flames, thoughts drifting to home, to her, to the life that seemed distant and impossible to hold on to. Sleep came fitful, haunted by images of the forest, the painted faces of the enemy, and the cries of battle. Morning arrived damp and gray, mist rising from the earth, chilling me to the bone. Orders came swiftly, and the march resumed, deeper into unknown lands, each step heavy, each mile a test of endurance, patience, and courage. The next day, the centurion signaled a halt near a narrow valley, orders crisp and unyielding. A handful of us scouts, Marcus and I among them, were sent ahead to retcon, to map the terrain, and to watch for enemy movements. The main legion waited, behind shields, gleaming faintly in the morning mist, trusting us to see what they could not. We rode carefully, the forest thickening, branches scraping armor, roots threatening to trip hooves. Every sound was magnified, the drip of water from leaves, the snap of twigs underfoot, the faint call of distant birds. My senses sharpened until I felt as though I could hear the earth breathe beneath Valen's hooves. A small stream crossed our path, water rushing cold and clear. We dismounted briefly, scanning upstream and downstream. Marcus pointed to faint footprints pressed into the mud, deep and heavy, signs of a larger force moving through the forest ahead. My stomach clenched. The Gauls were near, watching, waiting, invisible yet threatening. We proceeded with caution, weaving between trees, moving silently, every movement deliberate. I noticed broken branches, trampled underbrush, and the faint smell of smoke lingering faintly in the damp air. These were the signs we had been trained to see, indicators of camps or ambushes. And each discovery set my pulse racing. Suddenly, a whistle echoed faintly from the undergrowth. Marcus froze, hand raised. I nudged Valens into cover, blending into the shadows of a large oak. From between the trees, a pair of Gaulish scouts appeared, arrows notched, eyes wide with surprise. I signaled to Marcus, and we readied our spears, hearts pounding. The encounter was swift. We struck before they could fully react, driving them back into the forest, but not before one loosed an arrow that grazed my shoulder, stinging and warm. I pressed a hand to the wound, tasting iron, and we moved onward. Adrenaline sharpening every sense, every decision, knowing a full ambush could come at any moment. Hours passed in tense observation. We noted another valley ahead, low hills lining it, the faint sound of a river far off. Marks in the soil suggested that enemy scouts had crossed recently, and smoke curling above a distant ridge hinted at a temporary camp. We cataloged everything, silent except for whispered signals, every piece of information vital as the sun climbed, heat and humidity rising. We returned to the main legion, reporting our findings to the centurion. The men absorbed the intelligence, quickly, issuing orders, rearranging formations, and sending small detachments to secure flanks. I felt a mixture of pride and relief, knowing our reconnaissance had likely prevented a trap. That night, as the Legion set up camp, we scouts were tasked with a final sweep, to ride the perimeter and ensure no enemy lingered nearby. The forest, at twilight, was eerie, shadows long and merging, sounds amplified. Each rustle, each owl's call, made me grip Valen's reins tighter, muscles tense. Senses alert. By the fire later, Marcus and I shared a small meal, hands still trembling slightly. We spoke little, exchanging brief nods and quiet laughter to mask the tension. The camp around us was restless, men murmuring about the forest, the enemy, and the uncertainty ahead. I lay awake long into the night, thinking of home, of her charm, of the life that seemed impossibly far away. The following days, every morning brought new signs of movement. Smoke on distant hills, dust rising like a haze, and faint echoes of shouting carried through the valleys. Marcus and I rode ahead, scouting in pairs, reporting constantly. Each trace we found broken trees, footprints, hastily abandoned supplies, spoke of a gathering force far larger than anything we had encountered. By mid-morning, the valley opened into a rolling plain, and we glimpsed them, thousands of Gauls, their banners snapping in the wind, painted warriors moving in tight formations. My stomach turned with awe and fear. I signaled Marcus, noting terrain, river crossings, and ridges. The army sprawled like a living shadow, and I thought of how quickly we might be swallowed in their tide. We returned swiftly to the legion, our horses straining under speed. The centurion took our report seriously, eyes narrowing, lips pressed tight. He consulted the senior officers before turning to Caesar. The decision came quickly. We were to scout forward once more, to locate a battlefield favorable to the Romans, with high ground and firm soil for phalanx and cavalry alike. The next day, we rode deeper into the territory, the Gaul army faintly visible on the horizon. I felt my heart pound with each mile, the forest thinning to open fields, the wind carrying the scent of grass and distant smoke. Every hill, every ridge we passed, I tested in my mind. Would it allow legions to hold, or would it funnel men into a trap? Finally, we found it. A broad plain, flanked by low hills, a river curving protectively around one side, the ground firm and open, ideal for Roman formations. Marcus and I took careful notes, marking where cavalry could flank, where archers could hold, where infantry might advance. I imagined Caesar surveying it, nodding with satisfaction at the tactical advantage. Returning to camp, we reported our findings. Orders were given quickly. Legions were to deploy at dawn, cavalry on the flanks, auxiliaries securing the river crossings, archers preparing volleys. That night, I barely slept, imagining the chaos to come, the cries, the clash, the mud, the fire of battle, consuming everything in sight. Morning broke with a crimson glow, smoke rising from torches and early skirmishes. The legions formed in perfect lines, shields raised, standards held high, the clatter of armor ringing across the plain. I rode with my small scout contingent, flanking ahead, watching the Gauls assemble, painted and screaming, their numbers overwhelming, horns blasting. The clash began with a roar. Gaulish missiles hissed through the air, arrows and javelins striking shields and armor, the sound like thunder. I dodged, countered, spurred Valens forward, and drove my spear into the first warrior I met. Around me, chaos and fury collided, the earth shaking beneath hooves and feet. Men falling, screaming, or charging with desperation. Our cavalry struck the flanks as planned. I led a charge down the ridge, cutting through lighter enemy units. Shield clashing, spear thrust, Valens weaving between men with uncanny instinct. The Gauls fought with ferocity unmatched, axes swinging, war cries echoing. Yet the discipline of the Roman lines held a wall of iron and resolve. Hours passed in a blur of combat. Dust and blood filled the air, screams of pain and triumph blending into a cacophony that drowned out thought. I fought, retreated, charged again, each moment a pulse of life and death. Marcus rode beside me, both of us covered in grime and blood, yet alive, driven by training and will. The center of the battlefield was a storm. Infantry clashed with Gaulish heavy units, shields splintering, swords striking, spears piercing. I saw men I knew fall and rise again, courage burning in their eyes even as fatigue threatened to collapse them. The earth itself seemed soaked with struggle, churned to mud, splattered with red dot. By midday, the tide began to turn. Roman discipline, formations, and coordination pressed against the Gauls' ferocity. Cavalry charges from flanks disrupted their lines, archers raining death from ridges, and I felt a surge of pride in our precision and endurance. Yet the cost was written on every face, every wound, every body lying still in the mud. The final push came with a crescendo of shouting, metal on metal hooves pounding. We drove the enemy back toward the river, skirmishes erupting in the rear as the Gauls tried to regroup. I thrust, parried, kicked with Valens, and rode forward, heart racing, until the field fell eerily silent except for groans, distant cries, and the wind carrying the smell of iron and smoke. When Caesar rode through the lines afterward, surveying the battlefield, I saw his satisfaction, his gaze sharp and calculating. I dismounted, hands shaking, muscles exhausted, chest heaving. Marcus nodded silently, both of us aware that we had survived a crucible of fire, and yet the memory of screams and falling men would haunt every step forward. That night, fires burned low. We tended the wounded, buried the dead, and spoke little. The Gaul army was defeated, scattered, yet the enormity of loss weighed heavily. I held the charm she had given me, whispering her name into the darkness, promising that I would return, that this war, these horrors, would not consume the life we had begun together. The day after the battle, the air was heavy, thick with the scent of iron, smoke, and mud. The plains that had roared with life and death yesterday were now eerily silent, dotted with fallen warriors on both sides. I walked among them carefully, helping carry the wounded, offering what comfort I could, feeling the weight of survival settle on my shoulders. Marcus stayed close, his own hands trembling as he adjusted armor and bandaged cuts. We moved in silence for a while, only the distant caw of crows breaking the quiet. Our small victories were tempered by grief. Faces I had laughed with or spoken to just days ago were now frozen in the dirt. By midday, a sense of relief began to seep into the camp. Caesar's orders were firm but fair. We tended the wounded, cleaned weapons, and the survivors began to speak in hushed tones, trading stories of near misses and small heroics. For the first time since leaving home, I felt a flicker of pride without immediate fear. In the evening, as the fires crackled low, a small celebration began. Wine was distributed, meager, but enough to lift spirits, and some men sang quietly, their voices rough and hesitant, but growing stronger with each verse. Marcus and I shared a cup, grimy hands clinking metal to metal, laughter forced but real. I allowed myself a small smile, thinking of home, of her face, of the charm pressed into my palm, the first scar from battle, a thin line along my shoulder from a glancing arrow, throbbed faintly, a constant reminder that survival came at a cost. I traced it gently, whispering a silent promise that it would not be my last, but that it would be remembered. Stories of the day's battles swirled through the camp, exaggerated and modest in turns. Men spoke of bravery, of narrow escapes, of the discipline of the Roman line holding against the furious Gauls. I listened, absorbed every tale, some comforting, some horrifying, and realized this was the first time I truly felt like a soldier shaped by war. Marcus leaned closer, whispering a joke about how we would show our scars to the women back home as if they were medals. I chuckled, feeling warmth despite the cold creeping into my bones. For a moment, the weight of fear lifted, replaced by camaraderie and the strange joy that only follows survival of a great ordeal. As night deepened, I found myself wandering the edge of the camp, Valen's reins loose in my hand. The stars above were clear, cold, and distant, and I thought of home, of her warmth, of the life waiting beyond this war. The memory of screams and battle cries lingered, but so did hope, delicate and persistent. I touched the arrow scar again, feeling the sting as a reminder. It was proof that I had faced danger and lived, that I had endured and could endure more. The forest beyond the camp murmured in the night, wind through the leaves, the rustle of small creatures, the distant howls of wolves. Life persisted, as did we. The men began to settle, some sleeping fully armored, some tending their mounts, some whispering prayers to gods old and new. I lay on the hard ground, head on my pack, thinking of her, of the quiet life, of what this scar might mean when I returned. It was not pain alone, but a memory etched into flesh, a story I would carry forever. Sleep came in fits, haunted by visions of the Gauls' painted faces, of their ferocity, yet tempered by the warmth of survival. I woke several times during the night, patting Valens, checking the perimeter, listening for sounds in the forest. Even in rest, vigilance remained, a scar not visible but etched in my mind. Morning arrived, with mist rising from the plains. The camp was busy with preparations, the wounded tended, supplies counted, men sharpening blades, and reins tightening. I inspected Valens, adjusting harnesses, whispering encouragement. Scouts like us were vital. Caesar relied on eyes and information as much as spears. The centurion called us forward, his face grave but satisfied. We rode ahead, scouting farther, noting enemy movements, terrain advantages, river crossings, and hill positions. The Gauls were regrouping, though fractured, their forces disordered, but still dangerous. Each mile confirmed the stakes of the coming engagements. Hours passed in silence and observation. I felt muscles ache from tension, lungs burn from riding hard, eyes strain from scanning the horizon. The first scar on my shoulder ached faintly as a memory, a constant pulse reminding me that danger lingered, that every glance forward could reveal death, that we must remain vigilant. We returned to the main camp as the sun reached its peak. Reports were delivered. Caesar nodded with quiet approval, his eyes scanning us for signs of fatigue or weakness. There was a pause, a moment of calm where I allowed myself to breathe, to acknowledge the pride in surviving the first major clash, to embrace the bond with comrades forged in fire. The small celebration continued in the evening. Food was scarce, but shared generously. The wine diluted, yet laughter echoed, rough and raw. I sat with Marcus, swapping tales of how each of us survived yesterday's chaos, embellishing moments, hiding moments of terror, feeling a camaraderie I had never known before the army. I noticed other men with scars, some fresh, some older, each telling its own story. I traced my own once more, thinking of home, of her eyes, of the life waiting beyond this campaign. A scar is more than a wound. It is a story, a proof, a silent declaration that one has faced danger and endured. By nightfall, the camp had quieted. Fires burned low, shadows danced across faces, and men slept lightly, restless, haunted by the day's blood and triumph alike. I lay beneath the stars, Valens grazing quietly nearby, and I whispered her name, a thread to the life I hoped would survive this war with me intact. Sleep eventually claimed me fully, heavy with exhaustion and reflection. I dreamed of home, of laughter, of peace, and the scar on my shoulder, a faint sting in the dream. A reminder that I had been marked by war, and that this mark would shape who I was, who I would become. A soldier with courage tempered in fire, and longing for love untouched by blood. Morning came again, clear and cold. The scouts were summoned to ride forward, to check for enemy remnants and possible ambushes, our role vital as always. I mounted Valens, feeling the comfort of familiar strength beneath me, the weight of my sword, and the ache of my first scar as a badge of both fear endured and survival claimed. We rode ahead in pairs, moving through the misty fields and forests. Every rustle, every movement was a question, a test. Marcus and I exchanged glances, silent agreements to stay alert, to trust each other, to read the land as carefully as the enemy did. The bond between soldier and scout, horse and rider, sharpened in every heartbeat. At mid-morning, a faint column of smoke caught my eye. I signaled Marcus, and we adjusted our course, approaching cautiously. Evidence of a small Gaulish camp remained, abandoned tools, cooking fires still warm, footprints pressed into soft earth. We recorded everything, knowing Caesar would value the intel as much as any kill in battle. The day passed in careful observation, hours stretching long under the weight of vigilance. My shoulder throbbed from the scar, a dull constant, yet it reminded me that I had survived, that my body could endure pain and carry it as testimony. Each heartbeat became measured, deliberate, a rhythm of life and war intertwined. Returning to camp at dusk, we reported to the centurion. Orders were issued to reposition the legions for security, to rest and to prepare for the next march. Small fires flickered, men whispered prayers, some sang songs softly, the first notes of relaxation after days of terror. And I allowed myself a sense of pride alongside the ache of fatigue. That night, I finally allowed myself a moment alone. Valence grazed beside me as I traced the scar once more, feeling the raised flesh, the sting that accompanied memory. It was not shameful, not painful in a way to hide. It was a mark of life endured, a proof of courage, a story etched into flesh that I would carry always, silent but potent. By the next evening, the camp had settled into a quiet routine, though whispers flitted among the men like restless birds. I sat by the fire with Marcus, Valence tethered nearby, listening to the chatter. They say the Gauls are calling on reinforcements. From across the river, muttered Lucius, a wiry soldier with a crooked nose. Thousands more, they say. Some swear they saw war wagons stacked with iron. Marcus grunted. Stories to scare fresh recruits. We survived yesterday, didn't we? If rumor were danger, we'd be dead 10 times over. I nodded, though unease curled in my stomach. Still, I said quietly, even rumors have a way of coming true. We can't ignore what they whisper. Nearby Gaius, a veteran scout, with graying hair and a scar across his cheek, leaned over the fire. I've seen them, lads. Not all rumors are lies. Gauls are clever. They hide, they strike, and they regroup faster than you think. Best keep your eyes sharp. A younger soldier, Flavius, shivered. Do you think we'll face another battle soon? His voice trembled with excitement and fear. Lucius laughed, dry and harsh. Face another, boy. You'll face plenty. First battle scratches the surface. What matters is surviving the second and the third. He shook his head, flicking a stray ember with a gloved hand. I leaned back against a log, tracing the arrow scar on my shoulder. We're scouts. We see first, report, live to ride another day. That's our duty. The men in the line, they fight the fights we warn them about. Gaius nodded, smoke curling from his nostrils. True words. You'll see it soon enough. Every step you take now, every report you make, saves a life. Even yours, sometimes. Just then, a new voice cut through the murmurs. Careful what you whisper, lads. The wind carries tales to ears that shouldn't hear. A young cavalryman approached, tall, dark-haired, with a quick, confident stride. He introduced himself as Titus, a new scout transferred from another. Legion. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Another scout, eh? Think you can keep up? Titus smirked. Try me. I've outridden the plains of Narbonensis in winter, and I've seen forests thicker than this, where men vanish without trace. You'll find I'm fast and quiet. Lucius leaned in, grinning. Quiet, eh? We'll see about that. I've had my share of companions promising silence and delivering trouble. I watched the fire dance in their faces, realizing that beyond the fear, beyond the rumors, bonds were forming. Every story, every laugh, every whispered warning was a thread connecting us, preparing us for what lay ahead. Titus looked around, eyes narrowing as he whispered, They say there's a hill too, the north, perfect for a Roman line. But it's watched. Gaulish scouts move like ghosts. Few live to return with news. You want to ride there at dawn? Marcus smirked. A hill, ghosts, and scouts dying. Sounds like a perfect morning. I'm in. I tightened Valen's reins. We'll need a plan. Quiet, fast, eyes open. No heroics. The men in the camp rely on us seeing what they can't. Lucius rolled his shoulders, stretching, grinning. Well, lads, if it's a hill and ghosts you want, you've got them. Bring back news, or bring back stories. I don't care which. Just survive. Gaius chuckled. You'll find surviving is easier said than done. But if anyone can, it's a group like this: Marcus, Titus, you, and me, and the lad from the plains. He looked at me, eyes sharp, the one with the fresh scar. I touched the arrow mark, feeling its sting. "I'll keep it alive," I said, half joking, half serious, "and make sure it counts for something." The night stretched, stories and rumors weaving into laughter, arguments, and advice. We spoke of battles past, of warriors lost and survived, of legends whispered in other camps. Tales of Gaulish warlords, monstrous warriors, and hidden traps colored the night, each man embellishing, questioning, and adding his own fear. Titus leaned back, gaze fixed on the stars. "You know," he said, quietly, "it's one thing to hear rumors. It's another to see them unfold before you. Don't let the stories blind you. Trust your eyes, your instincts, your horse, and each other." Marcus raised his cup. "Here's to that, to seeing, to surviving, and to living to tell the tale." We all raised our cups, firelight flickering across scarred faces, young and old, experienced and untested alike. I thought of home, of the charm still pressed in my palm, of the scar that marked my survival, and realized that tonight, in laughter, stories, and whispered fears, we were more than soldiers. We were a small family forged in battle, ready to face what dawn might bring. Dawn broke with a thin mist curling across the plains, and the camp stirred quietly. Men stretching, sharpening weapons, whispering to one another in low tones. I mounted Valens, feeling the chill on my face and the steady weight of my sword. At my side, Marcus beside me, Titus just behind, and Gaius bringing up the rear. Lucius leaned close to Marcus, voice low, eyes scanning the forest edge. "They say the hill to the north is cursed, that men vanish before even reaching the crest, swallowed by fog or worse." Marcus smirked, but kept his gaze sharp. "Cursed or not, we ride, we see, we return. Ghosts or no ghosts, Caesar will want a clear view, and we'll give it to him." Titus adjusted his reins, dark eyes narrowing. "Caution, lads," whispers. "Our warnings, sometimes exaggeration, sometimes truth. Trust your eyes, trust your horse, and trust each other. We ride together, or not at all." Gaius spat on the ground, a thin line of mud from the damp grass. "I've seen men vanish in thick woods, and not all whispers are lies. Watch the branches, listen to the wind, and don't fall behind." I felt the arrow scar on my shoulder throb faintly as adrenaline pulsed through me. The first sting of battle, still a reminder, a memory, a marker of survival. I nodded, letting the whispering stories sharpen my focus rather than fill me with fear. Flavius, younger and trembling slightly, whispered from behind, "Do you really think the stories are true? About ghosts and disappearing men?" Lucius chuckled, a low rumble of a laugh. "Truth or fiction? Boy, every whisper carries weight. A man who ignores them may live, or he may vanish into legend himself. Listen, learn, and move carefully." As we rode through the thinning forest, small sounds prickled my senses. The wind brushing through leaves, the distant rush of a river, and faint noises ahead that could have been animals or scouts of the Gauls, testing the perimeter. Marcus leaned close, whispering, "Keep your eyes sharp. The wind carries more than leaves today. Something moves ahead. I can feel it." Titus nodded, scanning every shadow. "Stay ready. If they're watching, we will see them first. That's the difference between scouts and men in the line. We see, report, survive. Nothing else matters." I urged Valens forward slowly, keeping a hand on his mane, feeling the rhythm of his breathing, the tension in his muscles, the familiarity of trust that steadied me. Every whisper, every rumor, every cautionary tale from the camp seemed alive here in the mist. Guiding our movements like invisible hands, Lucius pointed, voice barely above a whisper. "Look, broken branches over there, mud churned and fresh. Footprints leading up the hill. Not ours, not recent, something else. Watch." I squinted into the gray, the mist obscuring vision. heart hammering with the first real thrill of scouting in enemy territory after battle. Marcus and Titus flanked me, silent and steady, and I realized that whispers were more than stories. They were guides. Warnings written into the very earth by those who had come before. Gaius muttered under his breath, "Every whisper has teeth. Ignore them, and you'll feel the bite yourself. Move slow, move careful. Watch the edges of the light and shadow." I swallowed, tasting iron and sweat, adjusting my grip on the reins, and whispered to Valens, "Easy, boy, ghosts, or men. We see them first, and we come back alive." We crested the final ridge, mist curling around our boots and hooves, and the plains below opened in a sweep of green and brown, dotted with moving shapes. The Gaulish army stretched like a living shadow across the fields, banners snapping in the wind, spears glinting faintly in the gray light. Marcus whispered, voice low, "By the gods, look at them. Thousands. They stretch farther than the eye can see." Titus nodded, eyes scanning, hand on the hilt of his sword. "Count the banners, track the movement. We need every detail for Caesar. Heights, ridges, river crossings, flanks. Watch how they shift, where they gather, and where they are thin. Every step matters." Lucius muttered, crouching behind a low-rise. Whispers were right. The hill gives a view, but they also watch. Look at the smoke rising over their eastern flank. Likely scouts, or fires for signaling. Someone is moving ahead of us already. Flavius shivered behind me, whispering, "Do you think they see us?" I shook my head slightly, keeping Valens steady. "Not yet, but if we're careless, they will. Eyes sharp, breathe low, move as one. The moment we're seen, we become their target." Gaius, scanning the distant army, pointed, "Look at that. Formation, the heavy infantry in the center, flanked by cavalry. Archers at the ridges. They're preparing, whether they know we're here or not. Notice how they shift. Keep track of their numbers. Caesar will want all of this written down." Titus leaned closer to Marcus and me, whispering, "We ride in and out, fast and silent. Watch, report, survive. Nothing more, ghosts or no ghosts. Today, we are the eyes of Rome." Suddenly, a scream echoed from below, sharp and frantic. Marcus froze, whispering, "Someone's been spotted. Gauls, maybe, or scouts like us. Stay low." I pressed Valens into the low grass, hearing hooves clatter faintly in the distance. A small party of enemy scouts had wandered into view, there, armor glinting in the mist. Titus signaled with a hand, "Hold, let them pass. Watch. Take note. We move when they move away." Lucius whispered, "Remember the stories, lads. Shadows hide more than light. Keep your wits, keep your distance. They may vanish, or they may strike." We watched as the enemy scouts moved past, unaware of our ridge. Flavius exhaled shakily, whispering, "I thought I saw one of them looking right at me." Marcus laughed softly, low, "Then you're paying attention. Good eyes open, mind sharp. That's all that matters." Once the scouts disappeared into the trees below, Titus pointed toward the far side of the valley. "See that rise? The gentle slope before the river. Ideal for our cavalry. Open ground, no trees, easy for charges. Mark it, remember it." I scribbled notes in the small leather pad strapped to my arm, tracing the features of the land in detail. Every hill, every dip, every rise mattered. Marcus scanned with a spyglass, murmuring numbers and directions, calculating distances and angles, while Gaius muttered advice about terrain and ambushes. Lucius leaned in, voice low. Whispers said the Gauls favored traps in uneven ground. Notice every hollow, every depression in the field. One false step, and men vanish. History is full of it, and we don't want to become part of that story. Flavius whispered, nearly trembling, "I've never seen so many of them. Are we really going to ride back and tell Caesar?" I nodded, gripping Valens' reins. "Yes, that's our job. We see, we survive, we report. If we falter, The legion suffers. We cannot falter. Titus turned slightly, eyes piercing. Every whisper you heard in camp, every story, every warning about vanishing scouts, it all counts now. Keep it in your head. Move carefully, speak quietly, and trust each other. That is what keeps you alive. Hours passed as we catalogued the land and enemy positions. The Gauls moved in patterns, campfires rising and falling, banners shifting, horses prancing nervously. Every whisper from the camp replayed in my mind. Warnings about shadows, vanishing men, and cunning enemies. As we prepared to descend the hill and return to the main legion, Marcus muttered, "This is why we exist. To see first, to know first. Every step we take saves lives." Lucius spat into the grass. "And if we die doing it, well, the whispers will carry our names. Best make sure we don't die." I tightened my grip on Valens, feeling the arrow scar on my shoulder throb faintly, a reminder that survival carries both pain and wisdom. The whispers, the stories, the legends, all became tools, shaping our senses, guiding our movements as we navigated the ridge and prepared to ride back with news that could save a legion. We began the descent carefully, Valens picking his steps over loose stones, hooves crunching softly against the damp earth. Mist still clung to the forest edge, shadows bending unnaturally around trees, each whisper from the camp replaying in my mind. Marcus leaned low over his horse's neck, whispering, "Watch every branch, every shadow. They may have left scouts behind, or worse, traps. Ghosts of yesterday, remember." Titus nodded, eyes scanning, hand on the hilt. "Keep tight. If we're seen, we retreat together. No heroics. Every man alive counts more than glory." Suddenly, a branch snapped sharply to our right. Flavius yelped and flinched. I pressed Valens back, whispering, "Easy, steady, eyes open. Let's see who or what it is." From the undergrowth, 3 Gaulish scouts emerged, weapons raised, eyes wide, unsure if we were friend or foe. Lucius hissed, "Hold your ground, lads. Don't give them a reason to charge." I weighed the distance, Valens tense beneath me. Marcus shifted, whispering, "We ride fast if they move. No fighting, just observation. Eyes, remember, eyes, and report." The Gauls hesitated, unsure. One raised a hand, seemingly to signal something. Titus tensed, whispering, "They'll test us. Wait for the right moment." Suddenly, the nearest Gaul lunged. We reacted instantly, Valens kicking forward, hooves splashing through mud, thrusting spears defensively. Arrows flew past, thudding, into trees or the earth, missing by inches. Lucius drove his spear with precision, forcing 2 Gauls back into the brush. I jabbed at the third, enough to make him retreat. Marcus covered our flank, shouting warnings to keep the line together. Flavius, eyes wide, muttered, "I've never moved that fast." My heart's in my throat. I gritted my teeth, feeling adrenaline, sweat, and the throb of my scar mingling, guiding me through instinct. We drove the scouts back, keeping formation, and then, as quickly as the encounter began, the Gauls melted into the forest, leaving us shaken but alive. Breathing heavily, Titus muttered, "This is why whispers matter. They tell you where danger hides, what to watch. Heed them, and you live. Forget them, and you don't." Marcus exhaled, trying to laugh. "Well, lads, ghosts or scouts, we saw them first, and we lived to ride back. That counts for something." We continued toward camp, tense, quiet, listening to every snapping twig, every rustle in the underbrush. The whispers from the night and from the ridge now seemed alive, warnings in motion, reminders of why scouts survive not by brute strength, but by caution, observation, and trust in one another. By the time the camp came into view, the sun was low, a warm glow cutting through the mist. We approached slowly, wary, and reported our observations, detailing enemy numbers, positions, in the encounter with the scouts. Caesar listened, silent and calculating, then nodded sharply. The men gathered around, murmuring stories of our ride, exaggerating and embellishing, as usual. Flavius whispered to me, eyes wide, we really drove them back. We saw ghosts and beat them. I smiled, patting him on the shoulder. No ghosts today, just men. But we saw them first, and we lived. That's what matters. We rode into camp slowly, hearts still hammering, Valen's hooves kicking up soft mud, the sun low and golden on the horizon. The men paused in their routines, eyes following us, whispering among themselves about what we might have seen. Marcus leaned close, voice low. I think they saw us. Those Gaulish scouts, they weren't blind. Their eyes followed us as we drove them back. I felt a cold twist in my stomach, tracing the throb of my arrow scar. If they saw us, they'll tell their commanders. There will be more scouts, more patrols. We need to be ready. Titus nodded grimly, reins tight in his hands. Exactly. This wasn't the last encounter. The Gauls know we're watching. They'll send more. Every ride from now on will be riskier. Lucius spat, muttering, good. Let them send more. We'll see them first again. That's our advantage, and we won't lose it. But don't forget they're clever, and numbers are on their side. Flavius whispered, voice barely audible. So we're marked now. Gaius chuckled softly. Marked, or noticed. Call it what you like. All it means is, tomorrow, and the day after, we ride with sharper eyes, lighter hearts, and keener wits. That's all a scout can do. Watch, report, survive. We dismounted near the command tent, muddy and sweaty, Valens stamping softly. The centurion glanced up from maps spread on a wooden table, eyes sharp. Report, he commanded, tone curt, the weight of authority pressing down. I stepped forward, clearing my throat. We ascended the northern hill and observed the Gaulish army. They are gathering in formation, heavy infantry in the center, cavalry on the flanks, archers positioned on ridges. Fires rise and fall, indicating movement of small groups, likely scouts. We encountered 3 scouts on our descent. Marcus added quickly. We drove them back without losses, but they observed us as well. It is likely more Gaulish scouting parties will follow. We recommend increased vigilance on future rides, and that patrols be prepared for repeated contact. The centurion studied our report, brow furrowed, then nodded sharply. Good. You saw what Caesar needs to know. Your caution saved lives today. Remember, every scout you encounter, every shadow you follow, is part of the intelligence we use. You are the eyes of the Legion. Titus stepped forward, voice steady. They will be sending more scouts, sir. We suggest we rotate observation parties, vary routes, and avoid predictability. This is their first sighting of our patrols. They will act on it. The centurion tapped the table, voice low but firm. Excellent. I want logs of positions, counts, terrain features, and enemy movements. Report each encounter immediately. The Gauls saw you today, and we will not let them surprise us. Well done, Lucius whispered as we left the tent, voice rough but full of energy. They saw us, lads. That's both a warning and an opportunity. We ride again tomorrow, and the next day, and every day after. Eyes sharp, heart steady. Flavius muttered, shivering slightly. I don't like being seen, but I guess we have no choice. I nodded, hand resting on my scar, feeling its dull ache. No choice, Flavius. But we survived once, and we'll survive again. The Gauls know we're watching now. That means we matter. That means we keep them off balance. Marcus smirked, glancing at the fading light. Tomorrow we ride again? More whispers, more shadows, more eyes. But we ride together, and that counts for more than luck. The morning air was crisp, the scent of wet grass and horse sweat mingling as we saddled Valens and the other mounts. Reports from our previous ride had been delivered to the centurion, and now we were preparing to ride again, this time deeper, toward the Helveti's route, following the San River. Titus adjusted his reins, eyes scanning the horizon. Remember, lads, the Helvetii are on the move. Thousands of men, women, and children, pushing wagons and cattle along their migration. They aren't just soldiers. Every scout counts. Every report matters. Marcus nodded, gripping his spear. And rumor says they've been attacked by the Sequani and Adui already. They've seen combat and survived, so caution. They know how to fight in small groups, hide, and vanish. Lucius snorted. Rumors are nothing. I've heard the same stories about forests swallowing men, and every time, it's just mud and shadows. But today, we keep our eyes sharper than ever. Every shadow could be a soldier, every mist a trap. We rode along the ridge above the sand, scanning for smoke, movement, or the glint of iron. Gaius, ever watchful, whispered, "The river slows their march. Carts, families, livestock, this is where they are most vulnerable. If we ride carefully, we can report numbers and positions before they even see us." Flavius shivered, whispering to me, "Do you think they know we're watching?" "The Gauls do. They notice scouts like us." I tightened my grip on Valen's reins, feeling the familiar tension. Yes, if they see you, they watch. If they don't, we ride silently. Either way, eyes open, heart steady, that's all a scout can do. Hours passed, the mist curling along the riverbanks, hiding wagons and groups of Helvetii warriors training on the move. We paused at a high point, counting soldiers, noting formations, and tracking their path. Marcus leaned close, whispering, "They are stronger than the rumors said. Thousands of warriors in loose formation, civilians in the middle. If Caesar wants to strike, he needs every detail we can give him." Titus nodded, adding, "We note weak points, river crossings, forested approaches. Every patrol we send, every ridge we observe, gives Caesar an edge. That's why we exist, lads. Not for glory, but for survival and strategy." Suddenly, from the trees to our right, a small party of Helvetii warriors appeared, likely scouting for their own intelligence. Their eyes widened as they caught sight of us, and I felt the adrenaline spike. Lucius hissed, "Hold steady. Don't engage. Let them pass. Observe. Report. We are not the army in the field. We are the eyes of it." The Helvetii hesitated, scanning the ridge, then slowly moved along the edge of the river, disappearing into the mist. Flavius exhaled shakily, whispering, "They saw us, didn't they?" I nodded. "Yes. That means more scouts will come tomorrow, and the day after. They know we are watching. Every move counts now." By late afternoon, we returned to camp with our notes, detailing Helvetii numbers, positions, river crossings, and the sighting of enemy scouts. The centurion listened closely, frowning as he traced our observations on the map. "This is good," he said, voice low but sharp. "The Helvetii are on the march, but they are being watched. Your scouting will allow Caesar to plan where to strike, where to ambush, and how to cut off their movement. Be ready. These reports are the difference between victory and chaos." Titus leaned close, whispering as we mounted to return to our quarters. "They saw us. That means the Helvetii will adjust, send more scouts, perhaps try ambushes. Every ride now will be riskier. Remember that." Lucius spat into the dirt, voice low. "Risky or not, we keep riding. Every shadow, every whisper, every scout counts. If we falter, the legion suffers. We don't falter." That evening around the fire, whispers ran wild among the men. "Did you hear the scouts saw Helvetii moving like ghosts along the river?" One muttered. "They've spotted us too," another added. Flavius shivered, listening, while Marcus and Titus discussed routes and terrain. Each detail calculated and debated. I sat back, hands on Valen's mane, thinking about the coming days. The whispers were alive, guiding, warning, shaping our next moves. We were scouts, yes, but now more than ever, our eyes, our instincts, our trust in each other would be the edge Caesar needed for the first major engagement, the Battle of Beep. The next morning, the camp stirred before dawn. Mist hung low over the plains, clinging to the wagons and tents, and the smell of damp earth mixed with smoke from small cooking fires. Marcus, Titus, Lucius, and I mounted in silence, each lost in thought, every whisper from the previous day echoing in our minds. Titus broke the quiet first, voice low. The Helvetii have likely sent more scouts after yesterday. They saw us on the ridge. Expect resistance, traps, or more eyes on every approach. Flavius swallowed nervously, whispering, "So, they're tracking us now." I nodded, adjusting Valen's reins. "Yes, and we do the same. Every hill, every hollow, every bend in the river is a lookout. We move fast, stay low, and report everything. Our survival depends on it." We rode along the sand, tracking the Helvetii's route. Families moved slowly, with carts and livestock, warriors forming loose protective groups, and small groups of scouts flitted through the edges of the forests. The Helvetii had grown cautious, likely aware of the presence of Roman eyes. Their movements deliberate, calculated. Lucius muttered, "See how they tighten their flanks. They know we watch. Every ridge, every path, every river crossing has scouts." Our rumors were truth. They adapt quickly. Marcus glanced at the distant ridges, counting banners and noting positions, whispering, "The main body moves slowly. Cavalry scouts on the flanks. They're not expecting a full assault yet, but they anticipate threats. Every crossing, every hollow, every ridge is a potential ambush." Titus leaned low, scanning the distant tree line. "Watch the river bend up ahead. They've been using it to cover movements. Expect patrols. If we're seen, retreat together, eyes sharp." As we approached the bend, 3 Helvetii scouts suddenly appeared on a rise, their spears catching the first light of the sun. They froze, spotting us immediately. Flavius whispered, "They saw us, didn't they?" I gritted my teeth. "Yes, and now we are expected. Move slowly, stay low, and keep formation. They'll be back with reinforcements, or alert their army. Every detail we observe is crucial for Caesar's plan." Lucius hissed, "Hold steady, let them pass, and we note everything. Their movement, numbers, direction. Do not engage unless forced." The Helvetii scouts lingered for a moment, scanning the ridge, then disappeared behind trees. Marcus exhaled softly. "They saw us, but we saw them first. That's what counts." We continued along the ridge, noting every wagon's load, every group of armed warriors, every path through the forests. By midday, we turned back toward camp, hearts still racing, minds sharp with calculations. Back at camp, we delivered our report to the centurion, detailing numbers, formations, river crossings, and the sighting of enemy scouts. "The Helvetii are cautious and aware," Titus said. "They know we are here. Future reconnaissance will face increased risk." The centurion frowned, studying the report carefully. "Good. Your observations allow Caesar to anticipate their movements, plan his formations, and know where to strike. The Helvetii have been seen, and that knowledge will give Rome the advantage." Lucius whispered as we left. "They've seen us, lads. This is only the beginning. More scouts, more patrols, more eyes." The whispers in camp were right. We ride at our own risk, and every ride counts. Flavius muttered, "I've never felt so watched in my life." I touched my scar, feeling its dull ache, then remember it. Every glance they give us, every shadow they cast, is a warning. We survive by seeing first, by knowing more than they do. That is our power. By evening, rumors ran through the camp, like wildfire whispers of Roman scouts seen along the sand. Reports of Helvetii caution, tales of wagons and armed warriors, moving slowly but purposefully. Every man in camp knew that the first major confrontation, the Battle of Bibracte, was coming, and our observations would shape the plan. The morning of Caesar's planned engagement dawned cold and gray. Mist clung to the plains, and the distant rumble of wagons and armor hinted that the legion was moving to its designated positions. Marcus, Titus, Lucius, and I, mounted quietly, our task clear: observe, report, survive, not interfere, not fight, just watch. Flavius muttered, voice tight. I don't like watching from the sidelines. All those men down there, and we just sit. I shook my head, gripping Valen's reins. No, Flavius, that's our job. Eyes, notes, survival. The Legion makes the decisions, not us. We live or die based on what we see, and what we see is what matters. Lucius spat on the grass, muttering, easy to say when you're not the one who will charge into spears. But some of us think Caesar rides too boldly. He's clever, yes, but sometimes reckless. Watch carefully, lads. Don't die thinking we had a hand in it. Marcus narrowed his eyes, scanning the distant Helvetii formations. We don't decide strategy, we record it. Every hill, river, and flank. That's our advantage, and that's why we're alive. Don't waste energy grumbling about Caesar's orders. He sees the whole field. We see a ridge. Titus added, voice low, and some men in camp whisper that Caesar's tactics are dangerous, that he risks the legion too freely. I don't agree, but I understand why they talk. Whispers are as much about caution as fear. We moved slowly along the northern ridge, observing Helvetii formations spread across the valley below. Thousands of warriors, families, and carts stretched from one river bend to another. Every movement, every shift in position, every scout on the hills mattered. Lucius muttered, see how they hesitate near the river crossing. That's where a legion might strike, but who's to say Caesar won't rush in too soon? I've heard some veterans grumble. They think he underestimates the Helvetii. Flavius shivered, whispering, underestimates them. They're thousands strong. I patted him on the shoulder, whispering, exactly. That's why we watch. We don't charge. We don't order. We survive, report, and trust the men below to do the fighting. That's all we can control. From our ridge, we saw small groups of Helvetii scouts moving along the edges of forests, likely reporting to their commanders. Lucius squinted, muttering, they saw us on previous rides. They'll know we're near. Expect more patrols, more eyes, maybe even ambushes. Caesar doesn't know that. That's why our notes are critical. Marcus leaned closer, scanning, and some men whisper that he'll attack too early, before all forces are in place. I think he's confident in discipline and formation. I hope they're right. Either way, we see, we record, we survive. Titus grimaced, pointing to a distant column. Look at the northern flank. Infantry shifting, cavalry poised. Rumors in camp say some soldiers doubt the plan, think Caesar's tactics are risky. That's their right to whisper. That's not our concern. We watch, we report, we live. We spent the entire morning moving from ridge to ridge, recording positions, river crossings, and scout movements. The Helvetii were cautious, aware of Roman eyes, adjusting paths, flanking slightly, keeping families close to warrior groups. Every observation felt heavy with responsibility. Lucius finally muttered, whispers in camp, complaints about Caesar's recklessness, scouts disappearing before. This is all connected. Every ride, every ridge, every whisper, it teaches you to survive. Flavius sighed, whispering, I still wish we could fight instead of just watch. I shook my head, feeling Valen's steady heartbeat under me. Patience, Flavius. Survive today, survive tomorrow. That's the scout's way. Every soldier below owes his life to eyes like ours. Sometimes the smallest actions, notes, observations matter more than swords. By late afternoon, we returned to camp with meticulous notes, our hearts racing, minds exhausted. Some soldiers approached, grumbling about Caesar's plans, questioning the wisdom of a frontal attack or the timing of deployment. Whispers filled the tents. He's risking too much, too bold, too fast. Scouts saw nothing the enemy can't counter. Titus shook his head, whispering, "Let them whisper. We report what we see, and we trust the legion to follow orders. Our job is eyes and notes, nothing else." Lucius muttered, "Even if they grumble, they'll live or die based on what we record. Keep your eyes sharp, lads. More patrols tomorrow, more shadows, more whispers. That's our life now." Night fell over the camp, the sky low and gray, stars dim behind a thin veil of clouds. Fires crackled in small circles, casting flickering shadows on the faces of men, some tense, some whispering. We mounted Valens and the other horses at the edge of the camp, tasked with a final reconnaissance before dawn. Marcus muttered as we rode quietly along a ridge. "Whispers in camp say some veterans think Caesar is courting disaster. Charging the Helvetii head-on, they say it's bold, reckless. I say it's calculated, but we'll see." Flavius shivered, voice low, "Reckless? How can anyone call it that? Look at them thousands of Helvetii. They'll crush us if he missteps." I placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "That's why we watch, Flavius. We're not the legion. Our job isn't to debate tactics. Our job is to see, note, and survive. The rest belongs to Caesar and the men below." Lucius spat on the ground, voice rough. "I've heard whispers too. Some men grumble that the legion spreads too thin, that flanks are vulnerable. Perhaps they fear, perhaps they are wise. Either way, we observe, eyes, notes, survival. We crested the ridge, observing the Helvetii camp sprawled below in the valley. Tense, dim shapes in the night, fires flickering, warriors moving in quiet patrols. Families huddled near wagons, a fragile barrier between the army's strength and its vulnerability. Marcus leaned close, whispering, "See how they group near the river. That's where they'll cross first in the morning. The flanks are lighter, fewer men. We record, remember, report. Every detail matters." Titus nodded, voice low, "And remember every patrol we saw today. Every movement along the edges is likely aware of us now. More scouts, more eyes, more danger. Keep tight, move carefully, and trust your instincts." Flavius whispered, "Do you think they know we're watching tonight?" I shook my head slowly, feeling Valen's tense muscles beneath me. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, we stay hidden, eyes sharp. If they see us, we retreat, silently. That's how we survive. We rode along the ridge for hours, noting every fire, every movement, every patrol passing through the shadows. Lucius muttered, "These whispers from camp, the veterans questioning Caesar, the scouts disappearing before they're all lessons. Every ridge we ride, every shadow we see, prepares us for survival tomorrow." By midnight, we returned to camp, exhausted, covered in dew and mud. Some soldiers laughed nervously around fires, discussing Caesar's plans, questioning timing and formation, some fearing a disaster. Flavius leaned close to Marcus, whispering, "Do you think they'll be right? That he'll rush it?" Marcus shook his head. "Caesar knows his men, knows the terrain. He's bold, yes, but he's smart. Our eyes make him smarter. Watch, report, survive. That's all we do." Titus whispered as we unsaddled. "Tomorrow will be chaos, noise, spears, and fear. We watch, we report, and we survive. Nothing more. Remember that." Lucius muttered, voice rough, "Whispers are alive, lads. Every fear, every doubt, every shadow in camp or field, remember them. They guide us, warn us, shape us. Eyes and notes, survival. That's our gift to the Legion." We laid down near the horses, the distant rumble of Helvetii preparations echoing faintly. My hand brushed my arrow scar, dull and aching, a reminder of past rides, past danger. Whispers of camp, whispers of fear, whispers of opportunity. Tomorrow, the first clash at Baybrecht, and we would see it all, record it all, and live or die by our vigilance. Dawn broke with a pale gray light that crept slowly over the ridge, touching the valley where the Helvetii had formed their sprawling column of warriors, families, and wagons. The air thick with mist and the scent of damp earth, smoke from early fires, and the temps of river water from the sand below. Marcus, Titus, Lucius, Flavius, and I mounted Valens and the other horses silently, the weight of the coming day pressing against our chests like a physical force. Every muscle tense, every ear straining to catch the faintest sound of movement, of scouts, of patrols, stirring. The whispers from camp the night before had not left us. Talk of Caesar's daring, and some soldiers' murmurs of recklessness lingered, a low hum beneath the crackle of distant fires. Marcus leaned close to me, voice low, eyes scanning the Helvetii positions. They've grouped near the river crossing, as we suspected. Cavalry on the flanks, infantry stretched in loose columns, families protected in the middle. The rumors are truth. These people are cautious, but they'll fight if pressed. Watch the scouts near the forest edges. They're alert and moving fast. If they see us again, they'll sound the alarm, and everything changes. Flavius swallowed nervously, whispering, "I don't like this. Thousands of them, and we are just sitting here, watching. If something goes wrong." I placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "We don't fight, Flavius. We watch, record, and live. That is our job. The legion below will do the rest. Our survival depends on seeing more than they see, and being ready to retreat at the first sign of danger." Lucius spat on the wet grass, muttering, "Aye." And yet some men in camp still whisper that Caesar risks the legion too freely. Bold, yes, but reckless. That depends on what survives the day. Watch closely, lads. Every movement matters. We crested a small rise, the valley stretching below us like a living map. Thousands of warriors in tight, shifting columns, carts, laden with families and supplies, the occasional banner fluttering, the flicker of small fires signaling the beginning of activity. Marcus leaned low over his horse, whispering, "See that? They group near every ridge. They move cautiously near the river, and their flanks are lighter than the center. We note these points. Caesar will need them when he deploys." Titus glanced at me, voice low, "And remember, every patrol we saw yesterday, every shadow in the forest, they may have seen us as well. More scouts, more eyes, more danger. Keep your formation tight, do not break, and watch everything. Every motion, every shift could mean a trap." Flavius's voice trembled, whispering, "Do they know we're here? The Helvetii scouts, they've seen us, they could warn the army below." I nodded slowly, feeling Valen's tense muscles beneath me. "They may have, but we do not act on that fear. We watch, we record, we live. That is all a scout can control." Hours passed as we moved along the ridges, noting troop movements, flanking units, river crossings, and minor skirmishes between small groups of warriors testing each other. The occasional clash of spears and shields far below, faint sounds reaching our ears across the valley. The Helvetii were cautious, clearly aware of Roman eyes, their formations shifting subtly, wagons slowed by the terrain, and families kept close to the protective warriors. "A living shield," Lucius muttered. "They saw us yesterday. Today they move like shadows. Every ridge, every path, every hollow could hold them. Keep eyes open, lads." Whispers in camp spoke of danger. Today proves it. Marcus leaned over his horse, scanning, even as some soldiers grumble about Caesar's tactics. Too bold, too fast. We record everything. We are the eyes. That is all. Their whispers matter less than the truth beneath our eyes. From the ridge, we saw the first real clash of the day. A small skirmish where Helvetii warriors tested a Roman advance unit, shouting, echoing across the valley, the clash of bronze and iron sending vibrations through the ground. Flavius flinched, whispering, "I can hear them." So many voices. I felt my own heartbeat matching the distant chaos, whispering, "We are not the legion. We do not join them. We watch, we note, we survive. That is our power." Soldiers around us, those in camp, who had chosen vantage points along the ridges, whispered among themselves about Caesar's boldness, about the danger of frontal assaults, some muttering that the legion's discipline might not hold against the Helvetii's numbers. Lucius sneered, "Let them talk. Whispers are just words. What matters is eyes and notes. And today, we see more than anyone below. That is our edge." The sun rose higher, burning off mist, revealing the valley in more detail. Warriors maneuvering, families pushed behind carts, riverbanks dotted with scouts, small groups of cavalry testing positions. Our own scouting eyes darted from ridge to ridge, recording every formation, noting weak points, and watching flanks. Marcus muttered, "They test the Romans, probing. No full engagement yet, just skirmishes to gauge responses. Every detail counts." Flavius's hand trembled slightly on the reins, whispering, "I feel like the shadows are alive, watching us, as much as we watch them." I nodded, patting him on the shoulder. "Exactly. That is the life of a scout. Observe, anticipate, survive. Fear is a tool if it sharpens your senses. Panic is death." By midday, small volleys of skirmishes flared up between Helvetia warriors and forward Roman units. Distant shouts carrying up the slopes, and dust rising where cavalry tested the flanks. Some soldiers below murmured about Caesar's audacity, some questioning whether the timing was correct, whether the legion should advance so boldly into Helvetiae columns. Titus muttered, "They grumble, but our eyes give the legion the advantage. Every river crossing, every wagon position, every flank movement we note is part of the truth they fight by. We survive because we see first." Hours stretched into the afternoon, the battle unfolding in fits and starts below. Skirmishes, minor clashes, cavalry dashes, and the occasional shout of victory or pain, each echo carried by the valley air. Lucius leaned over his horse, scanning every whisper in camp. Every complaint about Caesar is for nothing. What matters is what we see, and we see it all. Every shadow, every movement, every word from the battlefield is recorded. That is our job. Not glory, not command, survival. As the first major Roman advances began to push the Helvetia toward the valley's open space, some soldiers muttered to each other about the risk, saying the army might be overextended, calling Caesar's boldness foolhardy. Flavius shivered, whispering, "If something goes wrong." I tightened my grip on Valens' reins, whispering, "If something goes wrong, we survive. We see, we note, we live. That is all we control. The rest is not ours to command." By late afternoon, dust and smoke mixed across the valley, shouts and screams fading and rising as the first real Roman pushes met Helvetii resistance. Small units engaging, testing each other, and the bulk of the army still maneuvering in formation. We rode the ridges carefully, observing every clash, noting soldiers' positions, scouts' movements, and the reactions of commanders, our hearts pounding, breaths shallow, adrenaline mixing with fear and awe. The Helvetii were resilient, moving warriors forward to hold gaps, flanking lightly, while families and carts were shifted behind. Marcus whispered, "They fight, clever, cautious. Every movement we note will be crucial for reports. This is what Caesar's plans will be based on." Soldiers below continued murmuring and whispering about the tactics, some questioning the risks, some cheering for every small victory. And through it all, we remained high on the ridge, writing, noting, whispering, surviving eyes, sharper than ever. The day wore on, The sun now high and bright, dust and sweat mingling on our skin, valens panting beneath me. Yet every ridge, every movement, every shadow remained our focus. We recorded each skirmish, every clash, every flanking movement, the murmurs of soldiers and Helvetiae alike, the careful caution of the enemy and the bold pushes of Caesar's legions. Aware that this was the first major engagement, the Battle of Bebrecht, and that our observations, notes, and survival were all that mattered for the coming reports, the whispers in camp, and the lives that depended on eyes like ours. Evening approached, the smoke and dust hanging heavy, and we finally rode back toward the Roman camp, exhausted, voices hoarse from whispers, hands cramped from writing, hearts still pounding from observation, every soldier we passed sharing grumbles about Caesar's tactics, whispers of fear, admiration, or doubt, but none daring to question the scouts, knowing that our eyes had seen what they could not, that our survival and reports were the only assurance they had of understanding. The battlefield before the sun set, and the night claimed the valley once more. The dust of the valley still clung to our clothes and horses, the scent of sweat, blood, and smoke lingering in the air as we rode slowly back toward the Roman camp. The Helvetii had been pushed back, their columns scattered in small pockets, some regrouping in the distance, but the majority had fled toward the forests, leaving behind wagons, abandoned supplies, and the echoes of battle. Marcus rode beside me, voice low. We did not fight, yet we saw everything. The legion has taken them down, but the field, it is not clean. Bodies, smoke, cries. The cost of Caesar's boldness is clear. Flavius shook his head, staring at the path ahead. I don't think I've ever seen so many men fall. Even the whispers in camp said he risked too much. I think they were right. Some of those pushes. Too bold, too fast. Lucius muttered, bold, yes, reckless, maybe. But the legion survived. That is what matters. We watched, we recorded, we survived. That is all a scout can hope for. Titus glanced back at the valley, whispering, see that ridge? Helvetii scouts still linger there. They watched us as we observed their retreat. They know eyes are on them. Expect more patrols in the coming days. Every move counts. Whispers ran through the returning legion, some soldiers laughing nervously, some shaking their heads, others exchanging stories of narrow escapes or daring charges. The first scars of the battle were visible cuts, bruises, a limp here and there, but there were also small smiles, quiet celebrations, the satisfaction of a first victory, however costly. Marcus nudged his horse closer to mine. Even those who grumble about Caesar now whisper about victory. Rumors travel fast. Scouts saw the Helvetii's movements first. The legion followed, and the day was won. The men respect what we observed, even if they doubt his tactics. Flavius sighed, rubbing the sweat from his brow. I feel like the shadows of the battlefield are still chasing me. Every cart, every tree, every path. I saw death and courage mixed together. I patted Valens, whispering, that is the first lesson, Flavius. The field leaves marks, scars you can't always see. Some we carry physically, some we carry in our minds. Tomorrow, we ride again. More eyes, more reports. We survived today. That is our first victory too. Lucius spat on the road ahead, muttering, and whispers will spread. Men talk of Caesar, his boldness, his risks. Scouts, our eyes, our notes, they become the proof of what happened. Let them talk, let them whisper. Our job is done until tomorrow. Along the march back, small celebrations erupted, men laughing quietly, sharing a piece of bread, recounting moments where they thought the Helvetii might push them back. A few soldiers with fresh cuts showed their first battle scars proudly, while others cleaned weapons and checked armor. Murmuring about the day's chaos, we, the scouts, rode a few ridges ahead, observing the returning enemy remnants, noting which paths they took, Which groups stayed behind to cover their retreat? Titus whispered. They will regroup. That is certain. More patrols, more scouts. Caesar will strike again. Our eyes will be needed again. Flavius's voice trembled. So this is it. Back to camp. And tomorrow we ride again. I nodded, feeling Valen's steady gait beneath me. Yes. We survived. We reported. We watched. And tomorrow we do it all again. Our eyes are the Legion's edge. Never forget that. The sun lowered, shadows stretching long across the plains. The sound of horses' hooves mingling with distant chatter, laughter, and the occasional groan of a wounded man. Rumors of victory mingled with whispers of risk, and the first small celebrations of a costly success spread through the camp. The Helvetia had been driven back, the first major victory achieved, yet the scouts knew the work was far from done. More eyes, more ridges, more whispers awaited in the days to come. Summary of this paragraph. After the Battle of Baybrecht, the scouts ride back with the Roman army, observing scattered Helvetii forces and remaining enemy scouts. Soldiers debate Caesar's tactics, noting his boldness and risks, while small celebrations and first battle scars appear among the legion. The scouts focus on observation, noting retreat paths and flanking movements. Rumors of victory and critiques of Caesar spread through camp, while the scouts prepare for future reconnaissance, knowing their role is far from over. By the time we returned to camp, the sun had dipped low, casting long, golden shadows over tents, wagons, and the exhausted men sprawled along the grass. Smoke from cooking fires mixed with the tang of blood and dust, and the air was thick with murmurs, laughter, and the occasional groan from the wounded. Marcus nudged his horse along the perimeter, eyes scanning every ridge, every path. Even as they celebrate, the Helvetii watch, he whispered. Scouts on the hills, in the trees. They saw us riding back, reporting they will learn, adapt. More patrols tomorrow, more eyes. Our work is far from done. Flavius shook his head, muttering, I don't know how anyone can sleep tonight. I saw men fall, I heard screams, I smelled blood and fear, and now, here we are, and some talk as if it was all easy. They call Caesar bold, clever, but I think some are afraid, and I don't blame them. Lucius spat on the ground, voice rough, afraid, yes. Some veterans whisper that he risks the Legion too much, charges too quickly, puts too many men in danger at once. I heard it around the eastern tents. He'll lead us to disaster next, they say. But the day was won. That is what matters. Our eyes, our notes, survived us. That is all that counts. Titus leaned over, scanning the horizon, and yet, whispers travel faster than news of victory. I heard men muttering that the flanks were stretched too thin, that the charge almost failed, that our scouts saw too little to prevent chaos. Perhaps some are right, perhaps some exaggerate. Either way, we must remain alert. Tomorrow, the Helvetia will regroup. Eyes open, lads. Our lives depend on it. As we moved closer to camp, small celebrations broke out among the soldiers. Some men laughed quietly round fires, swapping stories of narrow escapes or daring pushes. Others carefully examined the first battle scars, cuts on forearms, bruises on legs, a proud slash across a cheek or shoulder, silent testimony to the dais. Chaos, a few men joked, showing scars to each other, trying to lighten the mood, while others cleaned weapons, polished armor, or stitched torn clothing. Marcus muttered quietly, see how the men cling to these small celebrations. First, victories are always mixed with loss. Some cheer, some grieve, some wonder if Caesar was reckless. Whispers are alive, but they also remind us why we survive. We are scouts. We record. We observe. We live. Flavius glanced toward a group of men by a fire, whispering, they call Caesar reckless. Yes, but some still cheer him. I don't understand half of it. One moment, fear. The next, pride. Lucius snorted. That is war, lad. Fear and pride mingle like sweat and dust. But we scouts don't mingle. We watch, we note, we survive. And in doing so, we give the Legion knowledge they cannot otherwise have. By twilight, we had settled near our horses, scribbling notes, making mental maps, recording where Helvetii forces fell back, what paths they took, which ridges were observed, and where scouts lingered. Titus leaned over my shoulder, whispering, "The Helvetii will regroup, take stock of their losses, and adapt. Some men already whisper that they'll strike at night, or use the forests to flank us next. We need to note every ridge, every path, every likely patrol point. That is our future." Flavius sighed, voice trembling slightly, "And we ride again tomorrow." I nodded, feeling Valen's shift beneath me, muscles tired, but ready. Yes, more ridges, more scouts, more eyes. Every day we ride, every note we take, is what keeps the Legion alive. Today we survived, recorded, and returned. Tomorrow, we do it again, and the day after, and the day after that. This is our life now, whispers ran through the camp like wildfire. Some soldiers murmured that Caesar had been reckless, others that his tactics had been brilliant, that the Legion's discipline had saved them. Some exchanged gossip about who had fallen, who had gained scars, who had narrowly avoided death. Every man had a story, and every story added to the tense, electric atmosphere of the camp. Marcus leaned close, whispering, even as they celebrate, "Remember the scouts we spotted. Helvetii eyes are everywhere. They saw our movements, our reports, our small patrols. Tomorrow, they'll adapt. We must be ready for more shadows, more whispers, more danger." Lucius spat again, muttering, "Whispers, rumors, fear, pride, scars. It's all part of the field. Every ridge, every shadow, every scream teaches us survival. Eyes and notes, lads, that is our strength. That is all we have." By nightfall, the camp was quieter, fires burning low, smoke curling lazily into the sky. Men with their first scars rested, some quietly mourning, some quietly proud. Rumors of the Helvetii regrouping drifted through tents, while scouts like us prepared for the next patrol, ready to ride into shadows again. The day had been won, but survival observation and whispers of danger ensured that our work was far from over. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of smoke, earth, and the lingering stench of battle from the previous day. The camp was quieter now, tents arranged more carefully after the rush of soldiers returning, some still nursing fresh cuts, bruises, and the first battle scars. Marcus, Titus, Lucius, Flavius, and I mounted quietly, our horses tense under us, ears flicking at the slightest sound, ready for another day of observation. Whispers ran through the camp before we even reached the ridges. Some soldiers had received letters from families or returned wounded companions, murmuring of relief to survive, sorrow for lost friends, and, most importantly, news from Rome. Reinforcements were on the way, fresh legionaries carrying fresh arms and hope, sent to bolster Caesar's campaign. Marcus nudged his horse closer, whispering, "Fresh men will arrive soon. Some will doubt, some will cheer. Every new soldier hears whispers first about the battle, about Caesar, about the risks, and every man will test the ground with questions, complaints, and fear. Watch closely," Flavius muttered, staring at the ridge ahead. "Reinforcements. That means more men, more noise, more orders, but also more risk, doesn't it? They'll send them in without experience, and some will fall like leaves." Lucius spat on the dirt road, voice rough, "And yet their arrival strengthens us. We need fresh eyes, fresh arms, fresh strength. The Helvetii may regroup. More scouts, more patrols, more movement. We watch, we record, we survive. That is all a scout does." Titus nodded, scanning the surrounding hills. Some wounded soldiers will return home. Rumors say they carry tales of heroism and horror alike. They will tell of Caesar's daring, some praising him, some questioning his risks, and the men who remain will listen, learn, and whisper. The stories travel faster than letters ever will. Keep that in mind as we ride. We rode along the northern ridges, observing Helvetii columns still scattered in small pockets near forests. Some regrouping quietly, likely sending word to nearby settlements. Marcus leaned low over his horse, whispering, "They watch us as closely as we watch them. Yesterday, we noted them. Today, they note us. Expect patrols, scouts, even ambushes in the coming days. Every ridge, every hollow, every shadow matters." Flavius shivered, whispering, "I saw so many men yesterday, falling, screaming, and now, letters from home, reinforcements coming, some friends sent back wounded. It all mixes joy and sorrow, hope and fear. I feel dizzy just thinking of it." Lucius snorted, "Dizzy or not, we ride, we note, we survive. The fresh soldiers from Rome will not last if they ignore our notes. Our eyes guide them. Remember that." By midday, the reinforcements arrived in a long column, banners fluttering, soldiers marching in disciplined formation, some singing quietly, others grim-faced, wary of the valley below. Whispers ran through the camp immediately. Fresh men. From Rome. Caesar's letter says more will follow. They do not know what awaits them. Some will fall, as did we yesterday, yet they march. Veterans exchanged warnings, nodding to scouts, trusting that we would guide them with reports, even if only indirectly. We moved along ridges, observing both the Helvetii remnants and the incoming troops. The wounded soldiers returning home were escorted slowly, their eyes haunted, bodies bruised and scarred, some limping heavily. Titus leaned closer, whispering, "They carry more than scars. Their stories will spread, shaping whispers in camp. Fear, admiration, anger, every feeling counts. We must record what we see, so Caesar has eyes beyond his letters." Flavius' voice trembling, whispered, "Some of them are my friends, and they leave. Some will heal, some I don't want to think." Marcus tightened his jaw, whispering, "Do not think of loss, Flavius. Think of what we record. Every ridge we ride, every movement we note, every whisper we overhear it, is what keeps the legion alive. That is our duty. That is our power." Lucius chuckled darkly, and whispers are alive, lads. Today, men talk of victory. Tomorrow, rumors of losses. Next day, rumors of a new Helvetia strategy. All the while, we watch, we ride, we record. Eyes and notes are sharper than spears or swords. Remember that. By afternoon, we observed small Helvetia parties testing Roman positions, probing for weaknesses, retreating when met with Roman skirmishers, but always careful, always cautious. Reinforcements moved into positions, tents expanded, and whispers of the next engagement began to circulate. Caesar will strike before they regroup. Helvetii will harass our supply lines. Scouts saw them yesterday. We should move. Carefully, Flavius muttered, and we ride again tomorrow. I feel my legs stiffen just thinking of it. Every day, more ridges, more whispers, more shadows, and still, we survive. Titus patted my horse, whispering, "Every day, we survive. We see more. Every shadow we ride, every patrol we notice, every whisper we overhear it, is knowledge. The reinforcements, the returning wounded, the Helvetii observing us, they all move according to what they perceive, and we record it. That is our life now." Evening approached. Fires glowed in the camp. Soldiers tending to weapons, cleaning armor, stitching wounds, exchanging small stories, and murmuring about the first victory, Caesar's daring, and the next movements of the Helvetii. Scouts like us made final observations, noting paths, flanking positions, and where enemy scouts lingered, knowing that tomorrow, The ridge rides would resume, whispers would multiply, and the Helvetii would continue to test the Legion's vigilance. The first day of reinforcements had passed, some soldiers resting, others pacing, some sharing cautious laughs, others silent, reflecting on scars. Friends lost or sent home, wounded, and the weight of what survival demanded. We, the scouts, made mental notes, preparing for the next day, aware that each ridge, shadow, and whisper could make the difference between life and death. The morning mist hung low across the valley, dew soaking our boots and the horses' hooves. The distant sound of water from the river blending with faint noises of Helvetii movement in the forests beyond. Marcus, Titus, Lucius, Flavius, and I rode ahead along the ridges, scanning for signs of enemy patrols, noting every movement, every flicker of shadow, and whispering quietly to avoid detection. Rumors from camp were alive again, some soldiers grumbling that Caesar's reinforcements had arrived too slowly, others praising the swift arrival of fresh men, while all agreed the Helvetii were gathering strength for their next push. We spotted a small Helvetii scouting party moving along a tree line, lightly armed, cautious but clearly on a mission to probe Roman positions. Marcus signaled us forward, and we dropped silently into the folds of the ridge, Valens and the other horses moving with precision, ears twitching, every sense sharp. Flavius whispered, voice tight with tension, "I hate these shadows. Every leaf, every branch. I feel like they're watching us as much as we watch them." I nodded silently, heart hammering, as we closed the distance. The Helvetii scouts had not yet noticed us, moving quickly along the edge of a small clearing. Lucius muttered, "Keep low, eyes, notes, patience. We ride, we see, we survive, nothing more." Then, a snapped branch betrayed our presence. The Helvetii scouts froze, and one let out a short yell. Spears flashed, and in the sudden chaos, I felt a sharp sting across my side. My horse shied violently, tossing me slightly, and I stumbled, tasting copper in my mouth, as pain flared. I had been grazed by a small javelin, enough to break skin and bruise ribs, but not to incapacitate me entirely. Flavius gasped, "By the gods, are you hit?" I gritted my teeth, clutching my side, trying to stay upright on Valens, voice tight, light, but enough. "We fall back now," Marcus shouted, voice sharp. "All of you, pull back. Eyes forward, retreat in formation, cover your wounded." Lucius and Titus moved beside me, keeping pace as I guided Valens carefully down the ridge, sweat and blood mingling, every breath sharp with pain. My thoughts raced, fear mingling with frustration, the sting of injury cutting not just the flesh but pride as well. I had trained my whole life to ride, to scout, to see what others could not. Now, a shallow wound had taken me from the ridge, at least temporarily. Flavius's voice trembled as we reached safer ground. "By the gods, you could have fallen. Don't tell me you were reckless." I shook my head, breathing ragged, not reckless, alert. But mistakes happen. The ridge, the shadows, the branches, a small javelin. That is all. We survived. That is what matters. Marcus's eyes softened briefly, voice low. "You did your duty. You saw, you reported, you survived. That is all we ask. But this wound, it will keep you from the ridges for a time. Rest, recover, and we will find you a place in support until you heal." Lucius spat, muttering, "Support or not, the Legion needs you alive, and our eyes must remain sharp. This is reality. The ridge is unforgiving." Flavius shook his head, voice tight, "I don't like it. We are a team. Scouts are nothing without each other. Seeing you hit, it feels like a loss already." Titus rested a hand on my shoulder, voice quiet, "It is only temporary. You will heal. You will ride again. But for now, the ridge is not yours. We carry on. You carry us in your knowledge. Notes, maps, Observations. That is your power now. We returned slowly to camp, the ride heavy with tension and the first taste of vulnerability I had felt in months. Soldiers glanced at the red smear on my tunic, whispers spreading. He was grazed by a javelin. Our scout fell but lives. Even our eyes are not invincible. Some laughed nervously, others shook their heads, sharing tales of their own brushes with danger, all murmurs blending into the camp's living hum. At the field hospital, a medic cleaned the wound, patched it carefully, and bandaged my side. The sting of antiseptic mingled with pain, and I exhaled sharply. "How long before I can ride?" I asked quietly. "Long enough to keep you alive," the medic replied, voice blunt. "Days, maybe a week. You ride too soon, you die, or you worsen the injury." I nodded, swallowing pride. Tomorrow, I would not patrol the ridges. Tomorrow, I would record reports, assist in logistics, and watch the battlefield from safer positions, still contributing, still alive. When Marcus, Flavius, Lucius, and Titus came by to check, their expressions were a mix of concern, frustration, and quiet relief. Flavius muttered, "Damn it, you're supposed to be untouchable. Now we ride without one of our best." Marcus shook his head, voice low. "No, you're not lost, just shifted. Your eyes will still guide us. We survive because we see. You've seen more than anyone. Rest, heal, and the ridge will welcome you again." Lucius added, "The shadows can wait for you. They do not vanish. We will ride them, report them, and when you return, they will remember you." I smiled faintly, wincing at the stitch of pain. "I'll hold the notes, the maps, the whispers, then, ridge or not, my eyes still serve the Legion." Titus nodded, voice quiet. "Good. That is all we ask. And when you ride again, we will be ready to follow, as always." That night, as fires glowed and men tended to their first scars and stories, I lay near the horses, bandaged, exhausted, reflecting on how quickly the shadows of the battlefield could touch even the most vigilant. The Helvetii continued to regroup, rumors of their plans spreading in whispers among soldiers, and I, though sidelined from direct scouting, would continue my duty from camp, ensuring that every note, every map, every detail of their movements reached Caesar's eyes indirectly, surviving still in a new form, my pride slightly bruised but my purpose unchanged. Before the first light had touched the horizon, the camp was quiet. Mist curling low across the tents and wagons, dew-soaking leather and cloth. I adjusted the bandage across my side, valance shifting beneath me, muscles tense with the anticipation of the long ride ahead. As I prepared to mount, Marcus approached quietly, his eyes gleaming with news, cautious but eager. "Before you go," he whispered, voice low, "there are rumors, take them as such. They say Caesar is in talks with some of the local tribes, Sequania Dui. Perhaps the campaign may soon ease. No confirmations yet, but it has the men talking." Flavius leaned in, smirking despite the early hour. "You hear that? Maybe we can finally see the sun rise without expecting a javelin in our ribs tomorrow." I laughed softly, wincing from the bruise on my side. I'll believe it when I hear it from the ridge. But it is good news, even if only a whisper. Perhaps I leave at the right time. The journey back with the supply wagons and the wounded was slow, deliberate, each mile measured in cautious steps. Rivers glimmered in the pre-dawn light. Trees rose like silent sentinels along paths we had ridden 100 times, and I noticed how differently everything seemed when we were not in the thick of scouting. Less fear, more observation, more room to breathe. Villages we had passed months ago were rebuilt, burned huts repaired, smoke curling lazily from chimneys, the echo of the campaign slowly receding into memory. Soldiers shared quiet conversations, some humming songs of home, some tending carefully to the wounded, while I watched, recording movements, noting paths. and reflecting on the first major battle that had changed us all. The army's positions had shifted since the campaign's opening. Small forts, temporary camps, and supply depots we had seen on the march to Bibrecht were now abandoned, dismantled, or quietly reclaimed by local tribes. Paths we had once ridden under alert silence now bore the signs of daily life, returning, moving slowly, children chasing dogs through fields, smoke from ovens rising without fear of sudden attack. I felt a pang of wonder and relief. War's shadow receded as Roman control consolidated, at least for now. Crossing into the foothills of the Alps, the air grew colder, the mountains looming closer with familiar majesty. Each bend in the road reminded me of home, of the small town near Rome I had left only months ago. I reflected on the campaign, the Helvetii's attempted migration, the chaos of Bibrecht, the scouts' rides along ridges, the whispers, rumors, and the first taste of scars. Months of fear, observation, and survival, condensed into the thought that I had endured, witnessed, and returned alive. Finally, as the familiar stone walls of my hometown appeared on the horizon, my heart lifted. Valens trotted steadily beneath me, ears forward, sensing the quiet safety of the road. Families stirred in the streets, merchants opening stalls, neighbors greeting each other in the soft morning light. I dismounted slowly, hands trembling slightly with fatigue, bandaged tight but healing, and took a long breath of home air smelling bread baking. The river nearby, and the fields of wheat swaying gently in the morning breeze. The campaign had lasted almost a full year, from the call to arms to the major battle at Bibrecht, and the pursuit afterward, reinforcements, minor skirmishes, and reconnaissance along the Helvetii retreat. I had left as a young, inexperienced scout, newly married, and returned with the weight of battle, whispers, scars, and experience. Yet now, standing in my hometown, I felt the strange mix of relief and longing that every soldier carries, thankful for survival, eager to embrace family, yet already aware that the shadows of the campaign would never fully leave my memory.